接下來3題呢，就是它比較算是大家好奇的，就是好，我们来問看老師他有什麼想法。Okay, number 8. In Taiwan, most of the people who go to the yoga class are women. Comparing Taiwan to the United States and other countries, could you share some observation toward this faith?
Yeah. Well, I think it's everywhere, really. I remember when I was getting into yoga, like I said, as a young person, I would go to the yoga class, and I was very young. I was a teenager still, and not only was I the youngest person in the class, I was also the only boy in the class. So it's like that everywhere. I do think that it's starting to change, right? I do think that more men are getting into yoga now, and I see that yoga is much more mainstream. When I began yoga 20 years ago, it seems like the people who were doing yoga were a little bit more of like the artist, the hippies, right? It was the people who were more free spirits, free thinking. Where now when I look around my yoga classes, it's really the normal people, the person who has like an office job, that's like the businessman, or even military people. In the American military, yoga is very commonly practiced now, not only for physical benefits, but a lot of the mental benefits of yoga are being well understood. So it has shifted quite a bit in terms of who's doing yoga. I'm very lucky that I've been able to travel internationally and visit so many different yoga studios. And it's amazing how much the same it is, that even though you go to a different country, the culture may be a little different on the outside. Maybe there's a different language being spoken, different foods being eaten, that type of thing. But once you go inside of the yoga room, it's amazing to me how much is the same. And what we encounter when we go into a yoga studio is that usually we meet people who are very kind-hearted, usually have very gentle spirits, that are very interested in personal development. Even if they're there for a strictly physical practice, they're still interested in improving themselves. And I think that's something that all yoga students have in common, including me, that we're interested in being better people and trying to be a better person in the world. So it's really incredible how much the yoga community is the same everywhere you go. And I know for me, it's the place that I feel most comfortable. Whenever I go into the yoga studio, I always feel like I'm at home. No matter where that place is, it always feels like home to me.
Is it true that only the very advanced yogis can go and practice in Mysore?
Oh, Mysore. Well, Mysore is a city in India where Pattabhi Jois and his teacher Krishnamacharya were teaching yoga. So it's really one of the important places for yoga in the world. And then the Mysore class is the name that students of Pattabhi Jois gave for their classes, which were in that traditional style. And Mysore class is a little different than I think what we would consider to be like a typical yoga class. Usually when we go to a yoga class, the entire group, if there's 20 students there, the entire group is following the lead of a teacher. In the Mysore class, it's self-led. That means that the students are doing their practice, and then the teacher is giving specific instruction to each student. So it's a lot more like a one-on-one private lesson within a group format. So we take absolute beginners in the Mysore class, and the traditional progression is that on that first day, I would begin teaching the new student just the sun salutations. So I'm teaching just the very first sequence. I'm teaching them how to breathe and how to move through that sequence. When they come back the next day, if they've memorized that first sequence, then I'll teach them the second sequence, the sun salutation B. And if they learn that, or when they learn that, it may take, a fast learner may learn in one day. Maybe someone who's a little slower might take a few days. And then I can start adding gradually, one by one, a new posture each day. Of course, there's always going to be limitations. For some people, it's going to be a physical limitation that, okay, your body is stiff or weak, so we don't want to add too much, right? We want to give them just enough that they can do. For some people, physically they're okay, but mentally they can't remember the sequence. And that's okay too, right? We just go slowly with them times so they can remember the sequence.
Mhm.
I don't think that following a set sequence is important. The set sequence just gives the individual students something that they know they can follow. It gives them like a schedule and a routine that they can follow. So Mysore practice is really important because students can follow their own breathing and they can follow their own pace. And unfortunately, when we take a guided class with a teacher, we're always having to follow the teacher's pacing, which even a good teacher, right, their breath is not going to be the same rate for every student. Mm-hmm. Some people breathe slowly, some people breathe more quickly. Some people move quite slowly, some people move quite quickly. And that's important. So in the Mysore practice, students can move at their own pace and they can go at the suitable pace for their bodies. Mm-hmm. So Mysore is really for everyone. So that's at the beginner level. Now, at the more advanced level, that's where students can begin learning more difficult postures. That in a group class, it would be very difficult for me to teach some of these advanced postures because not everyone is ready for it, right? They haven't been practicing long enough, or their body hasn't developed well enough to begin those advanced sequences. But within the Mysore practice, then I can easily do that. So it's common that in a Mysore practice, we'll have a very beginner student who's only been coming for a few weeks, practicing alongside a very experienced yoga teacher who's been doing it for 10 years or longer. And what's really great is that in Mysore, each student can receive the appropriate attention for them, right? Another thing that's really good about Mysore is that your practice changes every day. I mentioned earlier that when I have my jet lag practice, if I would have gone to a really hard yoga class, then even me as an experienced practitioner would not have been able to keep up because my body was so tired and so jet lagged. But in the Mysore and the self-practice, then I could just go at my own pace. And that's really important that we can adapt the practice daily to what our needs are. And so Mysore gives the opportunity for that. So Mysore is really an individualized practice.
好，我们最后一题了。第10题。Okay. In Ashtanga practice, why do the asana always begin with the right foot?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'll give you two answers. The traditional answer from the Indian perspective is that things always begin on the right side. It's considered the lucky side. So in India, you eat with your right hand. It's considered to be the clean side, that kind of thing. So probably on a more subtle level, there's some energetic component to that, right? So one answer would be that it's the energy of the body to begin on the right side. I think some of it has to do with just being consistent. I think that when we begin on the right side, the teacher can more easily see where the students are at, right? So it just creates like a standard for the students to follow. And I think that some of it may be just superstitious as well. For example, in yoga, we always do the lotus pose, the right leg and then the left leg. And some traditional teachers will say, well, you do that because of the placements of the organs, right? You would want to do the right leg and the left leg because it's going to put pressure on the liver and the spleen in a very specific way. And while I do believe that that's important, I think that structurally it's probably good to have some balance. So maybe doing the left leg and then the right leg. And certainly in my own practice, I'll switch up. But I think that there's some superstition with that too, that in India they say that you should do the right side and the left side because it's considered to be like sattvic or pure yoga practice. And that if you do the left and then the right side, it's considered to be like black magic. So if you were to want to put a spell on someone, you would sit in the lotus with the left and then the right leg. And I don't know. I'm not Indian, so I don't really know if that's true or not. But I think sometimes these things are more of like a superstition rather than really based on any type of science. So for me, generally, I will follow the tradition because I do believe there's some power in following the tradition. But if I look at it more logically as a modern scientific person, then I say, well, it's probably not crucial that we follow that right side and left side. But I think it's good to be flexible in being able to do both, right? That we can understand the tradition and we can accept that there's some importance to the tradition, or we can also look at it more logically and say, well, it's probably not absolutely necessary to follow that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. I've been coming to Taiwan now for 10 years, and it's been a real joy to watch the growth of the yoga community here. When I first came, Space Yoga, where I teach, was a new studio. It was only 3 years old at the time, and the students were quite new to yoga, but there was a lot of enthusiasm for it. 10 years later, it's amazing to see how much the yoga community has grown. There are now many different yoga studios here and many really excellent teachers. In fact, some of the best yoga in the world, I believe, is happening here in Taiwan. When I come to Taipei, I lead public classes. So now I'm here for the month of December leading public Mysore classes. But I also work with individuals one-on-one. I have teachers who I work with and mentor, as well as my teacher training program that I do. The next training program starts in May of 2019. So my interest in yoga began really as a practitioner. I was interested in my own development. I was interested in developing my own body and my own mental state. Now my interest in yoga has really grown, not only to teach people yoga on a basic level, helping people to develop their own practice, but I'm really interested in helping teachers to develop their teaching practice as well. I believe that this is how yoga ultimately spreads, that when I train a teacher, that then she will train another student, and then that student will tell their friend, and they'll get into yoga as well. And it continues to spread out far and wide. It's amazing. Yoga is everywhere now. It's not just in India, it's not just in America, but it's really in every country, and there are more and more students and more studios that are showing up. And I never see that there's any competition in the yoga world. For example, my students who begin teaching do not take students away from me. They begin teaching new people yoga. So it continues to spread like that. It's a very exciting time for yoga. It seems like something that's gone from being more of a niche thing to something that's truly mainstream. That everyone is getting into yoga now. It doesn't matter what your background is, if you're a man or a woman, everyone is welcome within yoga. And to me, it's a really exciting time for the practice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. 如果你想要 follow up 的学生的话，可以在这边有 IG, Facebook, and YouTube channel.
Yes. Okay. Thank
See
you
you
very
next
much.
time.
Thank you.
大家拜拜。